Bantus, Negro, Israelite expansion into Africa. The Pygmy tribes in Africa have always been overshadowed and ruled over by the other great Hamite kingdoms of Africa. This includes the Libyan Put Empire, the Egyptian Mizraim Empire, the Nubian Kush kingdoms that ruled over ancient Egypt, and Northeast Africa. So the Bantus people are not Hamites, and the Pygmy tribes in Africa are not accounted for in African Hamite history, then who are they? The only people they could possibly be are the children of Canaan. Now here's where it gets interesting. Pygmy tribes like the Batwa or Twa Pygmies in Africa were found to have the same Egyptian Canaanite Pygmy Bes god in their pantheon of pagan gods. They also knew of the Pygmy Egyptian Phoenician Canaanite god Ptah Sokar, aka Ptaikos. Coincidence? In the Fa Pygmy language, the word Ilani or Ila corresponds to energy, force, power, or strength. The ancient Hebrew word El, meaning God, corresponds to strength and power. It consists of the Aleph, Ox, and the Lamed, shepherd staff, pictographed Hebrew letters similar to the Sumerian, Babylonian, Assyrian word Elu, or Il for God. In the first dynasty around 3150 BC, Pygmies served and worked directly for the pharaoh, including the royal household of the Egyptians. Now, were these Pygmy people Caucasoid? Of course not, because there are no indigenous Caucasian tribes in Africa today. Now, many Pygmy skeletons were found buried in lesser tombs around that of the tombs of the pharaohs. In fact, a proportion of dwarfs in the Egyptian royal cemetery of the first dynasty kings such as Djer, Hor, Aha, or Narmer were so numerous that many believed that the Pygmies were brought into Egypt from the land of Canaan. Back then, the Pygmies' purpose in the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom would be seen as a form of servitude to the Egyptian, Libyan, and Nubian Kushite kings, just like the Curse of Canaan states. According to Egyptian history, the black Pygmies of Africa were brought into Egypt as jewelers, tailors, cupbearers, zookeepers, fortune tellers, astrologers, and entertainers. Egyptian texts from around 2300 BC refer to the Pygmies as little men from the land of trees and spirits at the foot of the mountains of the moon. In Central Africa and the African Great Lakes region, the Batwa Pygmies are regarded as the ancient dwellers of the forest. They are also known as the keepers of the forest who dwell near the mountains. In ancient biblical times, Egyptian king Pepi II Neferkari, around 2200 BC, sent an expedition to Central Africa, the same place that many Pygmy tribes still dwell today, such as the Congo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, and Zaire, and returned with a dancing dwarf known as Akka. Now, in the pyramid text during the 6th Egyptian dynasty ruler Pepi I, it was declared that, quote, "He who is between the thighs of Nut is the Pygmy who danceth like the god and who pleaseth the heart of the god before his great throne." Now, the black Pygmies used in ancient Egypt were often used to dance for special occasions and religious festivals. Their god, Bes, was a dwarf god and was known for good things like fighting off evil spirits or fertility, so he was always associated with music, dancing, and sexual pleasure. Today, the Pygmy people in Africa still enjoy dancing as they are a happy people who are not governed by any specific laws like the Hebrew Mosaic Law, the Roman Law, or the Arab Sharia Law. By the New Kingdom period, from 1550 BC to 1070 BC, they would appear in Egyptian writings as a people of ridicule and abuse. In the Bible, the Pharaoh of Egypt gave King Solomon the Canaanite city of Gezer as a dowry gift for his daughter's hand in marriage. In the Amarna letters, the Canaanites sent distress letters to the Egyptian rulers for help against the chief of the Hebrew, which many believe was Joshua.
Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof. As the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you.
Now, many Spanish historians say that the word España, meaning Spain in Spanish, comes directly from the hidden word Sephanim, Sephania, or Sephania, which is a Phoenician Canaanite word which means land of the rabbits. Now, they say that the black Pygmy Twa people were the first people who named the land of Spain Ai-Sephanim or Saphania. Now, here's where it gets deep. The Hyrax coney rabbit-like animal in Hebrew is called Shapan or Shapanim, aka rock rabbit. It is only seen in Africa and Israel. Now, more than half of the world's rabbits and hares are seen in southwestern Europe, such as Spain and North America. Rabbits are different but very similar in appearance to the hyrax seen in ancient Canaan or Israel. One can see the obvious differences by looking at the ears. Now, if the Twa Pygmies named Spain as Sephanim, Saphania, or Sphania, the only way they could have known to call Spain this Hebrew term would be by associating it with the Hebrew word for a rabbit-like animal familiar to their ancestors' word for a hyrax coney in their ancient language, the Phoenician script, which is identical to ancient Hebrew. The root word of Ai-Sephanim or Saphania is the Hebrew Strong's word 8227a, Shapan, Shapanim, or Shepanim. Now, this proves that the Twa Pygmies living in southwestern Europe were speaking a language very close to Paleo-Hebrew, although they were not Hebrews. This is the ancient Canaanite language Phoenician. But wait, there's more. Now, according to ancient historians like Tacitus, Pliny, and Claudian, the Pygmies were the first people encountered by whites in the British Isles and Scotland. Now, these small black pygmies who were experts in alchemy, fortune-telling, astrology, and good fortune would spark the leprechaun myth in Ireland and Scotland. Now, the Abattoir pygmies, or Twa pygmies, call very tall people Ngwazi, or Langwani. In their ancient Malawian tales, the Abattoir pygmies speak of a time when their people were numerous throughout the land of Ham, or Africa, and how giants who were the first offsprings of winged spirits had sexual relations with the people living in Africa. The Mulanje Mountains and its forest reserves are believed to be the first home of the Abattoir people. Ironically, Egyptian texts from around 2300 BC referred to the Pygmies as little men from the land of trees and spirits at the foot of the mountains of the moon, and it just so happens that most Pygmy tribes across the world live near mountains and in dense forests. In Pygmy mythology, there is an account of a Garden of Eden, or stories similar to it, as well as a creator and a mortal savior like Christ. There is even a flood story amongst the Pygmy tribes. So did the Pygmies learn about the messianic prophecy of Christ from the Hebrew Israelites living in Canaan? Did they know about Joshua and Moses? Now consider these amazing facts. In the Pygmy creation story, God makes man modeled from the dirt of the earth. God breathes life into man, he becomes alive, and is called Efe. It's the same name as the Efe Pygmy tribes in the Congo. So God told Efe to have children, and he gave Efe seed dominion over everything on earth. Mankind did not have to work at this time and was immortal. The only thing God forbade them to do was to stay away and not eat from the Tahu tree. This was the first law that God commanded mankind not to do. Now, Efe, his wife, and children obeyed this law. And after some time, Efe had ancestors who populated the earth. And one day, a pregnant woman convinced her husband to eat of the fruit of the Tahu tree. The Pygmy man didn't want to eat from the tree, but the woman said it was a silly old law. The two argued about it, and eventually the man gave in. Soon, the man and the pregnant woman gave all the Pygmy people in the forest some fruit from the Tahu tree. They all thought that God would never find out what they had done, but he did. After God found out what they had done, man lost his immortality and was able to get sick and die. The woman was punished with pain in childbirth, and mankind was made to work the earth until death from that day on. Now, the Pygmy tribes were also aware of the giving of commandments to the Bantus people by God and the second coming of what they called the Pygmy Messiah. Now, the Hadza or Hadzabe people of Tanzania are people who carry the same Y-DNA haplogroup B as the Pygmies do, and to a lesser degree the Y-DNA E1B1A, which is seen in the Bantus Negro people. They are of short stature, just like the Pygmy people. And some also have an Asian look to their outer facial appearance, just like the Khoisan Bushman people. Now, according to the Hadza people, Ishoye, the creator, caused a great flood that was sent to kill the evil, wicked people of the earth, including the giants. The Hadza people also claim in their mythology that there was a Bantus Zanzu man, similar to Joshua the Israelite, who defeated the giants in the land of their people. Now, this falls in line with the Hebrew Israelites coming into the land of Canaan and being told by God to wipe out the giants, including the Canaanites, in the book of Exodus, chapter 33, verse 2. Now, the maternal DNA marker labeled 9BP deletion is seen in all the African pygmies and can also be seen in the Lemur Jews, the Remba, Venda, Shona people, Central African Bantus tribes, East African Bantus tribes, South African Bantus tribes, Native American Indians, select tribes in India, in Papua New Guinea, in the Philippines, in Polynesia, and parts of Asia, extending all the way up from Taiwan to Japan. Their African maternal DNA LOA and out-of-African maternal DNA haplogroups B, E, and F can be seen in Polynesia, Micronesia, Melanesia, and Asia. Now, the Lemur Jews who lived mostly in South Africa told their ancestry as Israelites who left Israel during the Babylonian invasion. They migrated into Arabia and further south into Yemen. From Yemen, they crossed over the Gulf of Aden into Ethiopia and later migrated into South Africa. However, the Lemur Jews carried the same maternal DNA markers seen in the different pygmy tribes scattered in Africa. The problem is, the Lemur Jews do not openly confess to intermarrying with pygmy women. So where did the Lemur Jews pick up this DNA marker carried by the pygmy people? And where did they pick up the Negro-specific paternal DNA E1B1A? It has to be in the land of Canaan or Israel. In the book Totemism and Exogamy by James George Fraser, he states that in Sir Harry Johnson's venture into the Congo and Uganda, he documented that all the Congo pygmies were circumcised, and both male-female sexes had their teeth filed or sharpened to a point. Now, the Canaanites will also learn to practice circumcision on their babies and men, as noted in the biblical story, the slaughter of the men of Shechem in Genesis chapter 34. Now, Shechem was a Canaanite prince who had sex with Jacob's only daughter Dinah,
because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said unto them, We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. But in this will we consent unto you, if ye will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised. Then will we give our daughter unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people.
Now, the Israelite E1B1A Y-DNA haplogroup and the L2 maternal DNA haplogroup, seen mostly in African American Negroes, today can also be seen in some pygmies in Africa. Now, this proves that the pygmy tribes have a long history of mixing with their Israelite neighbors, just as the Bible tells us. Now, here's where it gets even deeper. The Abattoir or Twa pygmies write their letter M pronunciation like a wave of water. It symbolized water for them because in ancient times they had a shrine altar to the rain gods on the Mulanje mountain in Malawi. In ancient Paleo-Hebrew, the letter Mem is drawn like a wave of water as it represents the M pronunciation and was a symbol for water. Coincidence? The Malawi Abattoir pygmies also wrote for their pronunciation of Ka, which is the letter K or Kaf in modern Hebrew, resembling the picture of a bowl, with the meaning cupped hand for making Nsembe offerings. Back then in ancient times, the Abattoir Twa pygmies offered up their offerings using their hands open, facing up, just like the Paleo-Hebrew Phoenician Canaanite pictograph Kaf. Now, the letter T, or the character associated with the T sound, was drawn by the Abattoir pygmies as a sort of X, which was the language of the Twa Abattoir Sapitwa priesthood. It is not a coincidence that the way that the Abattoir pygmy priests wrote the letter T pronunciation was the same way that ancient Canaanites and ancient Hebrews wrote their letter T. Now, with all this information, again, using critical thinking, we can conclude that the pygmy tribes in Africa are in fact the biblical Canaanites from Ham's lineage. Therefore, proving even more with our knowledge of the Bible that the children of Israel, including Christ in biblical times, could not have been Caucasian-looking people after mixing with the black sons of Ham for thousands of years. Now, this leads us to a bigger piece of the puzzle, a final puzzle piece that will help the world understand who were then and still are today the chosen people of Yahuwah, the real bloodline descendants of the children of Israel.
Wars. 1, 2, pestilence, earthquakes, and then famines. 3, deceivers who claim to follow Christ. That's Matthew 24, 4 and 5. False prophets, false Christ. Number 4, shout for the people of Israel shall return to the land. That's in Ezekiel 37, verse 21 and 22. Thus saith the Lord God, surely I will take the children of Israel from among the nations, whatsoever they have gone.
The time is now for the so-called Negroes in America to wake up to their true Israelite identity. The Most High is calling His chosen people to come out of Babylon and its system of deception. Will you be the one that has ears to hear and makes the right choice?
It's a funny thing, Mary. Once someone offers you a choice, you can't ever go back to the way it was before. If you don't try, when you go out of here, you'll find your pride has shrunk to 10 inches. If you do try, well, if you do try, you may have something to be really proud of. What do you say?